right, it's 4:23. We will call this meeting to order of the Nacogdoches Zoning Board of Adjustments, May 19th, 2022. Our first order of business will be our Pledge of Allegiance, so if you will stand with me. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. We have one item on our consent agenda, and I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, all right. We'll move on now to our regular agenda with a public hearing. Number one, consider a request for variance of the zoning ordinance section 118-202-1B for the expansion of a legal non-conforming accessory building on lot 7 and 8, block 1 of the Reggae Oaks subdivision located at 719 Inwood Lane. This request has been submitted by Charles Deere, case file ZBA 2022-02. Elena?
Thank you, Chairman. Elena Helton, City Planner. As stated, this is a 0.4 acre property located in the Reggae Oaks subdivision at the end of Inwood Lane. This is a variance request, meaning it's a variance from the literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance, which may be requested whenever owing to exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions that the literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in some sort of unnecessary hardship in the development of the property. So this is an image of the subject property, and so this is a traditional single-family structure. It also includes a detached carport and then a covered patio and in-ground pool in the back. The home is about 2,400 square feet. The detached carport is approximately 600 square feet and located actually you can see the image of it in the lower right-hand corner, so it is detached from the primary structure. This is just some character photos of some of the other single-family homes in the area, just to give you an idea of what type of adjacent development is surrounding the property. And this home, as well as the surrounding homes, were all built around the same time in the early 1970s. So the actual variance is the enlargement of a legal nonconforming structure. So the zoning ordinance refers to these grandfathered structures or legal nonconforming structures as structures that can be maintained, they can be continued as far as the original use, but they can't be enlarged unless the enlargement or modification brings the structure into full compliance with our current code. And so the property is zoned R1 single family, and so the property is subject to our single family development codes, which state that accessory structures have to be at least 10 feet away from the primary residential structure. So whether it's a storage building or detached carport, if it's not physically attached to the main home, it has to be at least 10 feet away from that primary residence. And that building separation is due to our building and fire codes for emergency access, things like that. So it's a building safety code. And so the actual variance is for the expansion of the carport. And so this is a survey of the property. The yellow square is where the applicant is proposing to expand the carport. And so this will actually be attached to the existing structure. If the applicant were to detach this proposed storage, meaning if they were actually to build it 3 to 5 feet from that carport, then they wouldn't need a variance. And so you can still add a separate accessory storage building to the property, and it would be fine as long as it met all the building setbacks. But because he's proposing to tack it onto the back of an existing carport that's too close to the home, that's what requires the variance. And so this carport was built 3 feet from the primary residence. Again, this subdivision was established in 1969. The home was built in 1970, 71, like the year that we adopted zoning ordinance. So it wasn't built to code, but it was built to code whenever it was constructed. And so that's why it's grandfathered in. And we don't require anyone to make changes. So essentially our codes aren't retroactive. And so unless you come in and make a change, that's when you're subject to our new development codes. And so which is triggering the request that you're seeing today. Now, so this is just an image of the subdivision. Again, this is lots 7 and 8. And staff finds that the request actually meets all of the criteria for approval, except number 5, which is that the plight of the owner of the property for which the variance is sought is due to a unique circumstance existing on the property that is the result or a general condition of the district in which it's located. So this property is similarly situated to the other properties in the subdivision. They were all developed at the same time with a similar style. So the circumstances for this property aren't unique to this property. It applies to the subdivision as a whole, so that's why it doesn't meet that criteria. Additionally, there is an alternate that's been provided to the applicant to build a storage structure and not have to seek the variance. As part of our notice requirements, we sent 18 letters to the property owners within 200 feet, and we did receive 3 letters of support. Those were included in your packet. And the applicant would also like to address the board before we open it up for public hearing. So at this time, I'll conclude staff's presentation, ask for questions from the board, and then we can ask the applicant to come and give their presentation.
Okay. Any questions from the board for Elena?
Not at this time.
I do have a question, I'm sorry. Okay, so can we go to the picture with the setback lines?
Yes.
That one? Okay, so my question is, the issue is that the structure is this a concrete slab structure, or is that a question for the applicant?
So the structure, first, let me back up just a minute. So accessory structures can be within 10 feet of the rear property line.
Right.
So, but what he's adding on to is the square that has the text carport. And so he's tacking the addition onto that. That's that yellow square that
Okay,
you see, yes, ma'am.
so the 20-foot setback line is a moot issue here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the only issue is an addition to the accessory that is a distance that's not a proper distance from the home.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Is that working? Yes, thank you.
And it's going to be attached to the existing carport.
Yes, and so that's actually what's triggering the variance, is he's wanting to attach it to that existing carport that's too close to the home, because it doesn't meet the building separation requirements.
So in an ideal world, he would move the carport back to 7 additional feet from the primary structure, and then this would be an allowable situation.
Yes, or alternatively, he could just not attach the storage building to the carport and just provide 3 to 5 feet of separation from the carport, and then it would also come into compliance.
Or attach the carport to the house?
Or attach the carport to the house. Now, if he does that, then it's all considered one structure, and it has to meet the 20-foot building setback. So it's a little bit dynamic, but again, if he were to attach it with just a simple roof line, we would consider that a single structure. He could add on to it, but he would have to meet the 20 building setback instead of the 10-foot building setback. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay, so an issue of whether it has utilities or not, and whether it is like pier and beam slab is a moot point.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. That's what I just needed to get it in there.
Yes.
Any more questions?
And this was to code when built, I mean, that we didn't have that, okay.
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for giving me some time. This isn't ordinarily the place that I enjoy speaking, but I do want to begin by thanking the planning and zoning staff, Wanda and Juan and city planner Hilton. While I certainly disagree with the city's recommendation, the staff has given me their time. I've called with a million questions. They've probably spent more time with me than they should have, and they have represented our city well, and I want to thank them for that. I'll get to the point. I did call and ask if I could extend my remarks just a little bit, but I'll make this as brief as I can. Some of this will be more perhaps relevant than other parts, but I think in the end it'll all fit together. You have the details before you, so I won't go over that unless you have questions. I do have a standard size carport. It includes a 5-foot deep storage area on the back of that carport. The carport exactly matches my house in style. Brick and vinyl siding, matching roof. So I wish to extend the storage area back 25 feet. The added space would exactly match the style of the current structure and the style of my home. The space would be used for storage and personal hobby activities only. So I've closely read the material that's been provided by the Planning and Zoning Office, and the documents that the city has provided state in part that the general purpose of the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance is to promote the health, safety, and welfare of Nacogdoches through orderly and efficient development. And so I just want to address that for a moment. As I've read through the pack and looked at all the information that I could get my hands on, it seems like there are 5 hazards that you're trying to safeguard the city and my neighbors from these hazards. And so I'll say just a word about each of those, and this will allow me to just timeline through the process. So the first one is encroachment. I first was informed on March 21st that I needed to apply for a variance because there was a 20-foot setback rule. I looked around my neighborhood and I saw that many houses and structures are closer than 20 feet. So with great confidence, I paid my $350 fee and I applied for a variance. I later learned that it wasn't going to be a 20-foot setback, but only a 10-foot setback because of it being an accessory structure. So no issue with encroachment. Then there was a little issue with utility easement. I won't spend time on that, but that was worked out to the city's satisfaction. Then the issue was fire safety. I was told by one that I could not enlarge the carport since it was built closer than 10 feet from my house, and that would increase the fire danger for my home. Mr. Paulette was kind enough to reach out to the fire marshal on my behalf. The fire marshal signed off on this and gave his approval, and so fire safety is no longer an issue. Then for a while, it seemed that a neighbor had filed a complaint due to traffic and security issues. Later, that complaint was determined to be misfiled, but I wanted to take that opportunity and just say something about my neighbors. Before I began the process, I sat down with Gary Davis, who is the neighbor that this will be approaching. Asked him if he thought this was okay. I would not have proceeded without his blessing. He gave that blessing. My wife also reached out to all of our adjacent neighbors to let them know what we were planning, to see if anyone had any questions and objections, and none did. So neighbors, that's not a concern or a hazard. And then diminished property values, and this is a little delicate. We have great neighbors. Everyone in my cul-de-sac gets along with each other. My neighbors all do a great job of keeping up their homes and their yards. However, it seems that everybody is putting up these buildings. Of my 4 adjacent neighbors, north, south, east, and west, 3 of the 4 families have buildings that, as far as I understand the planning and zoning ordinances, would be considered in violation. Now, I'm fine with all those structures. I don't have a problem with any of them. If I were king for a day, I wouldn't ask any of those neighbors to remove their structures. However, there are at least 4 buildings amongst those 3 families that are way closer than 10 feet to the property line. 2 are sort of portable, and portable is a relative word. Everything is portable, perhaps. 2 are not portable. 2 badly need painting. Another one is leaning at a 10-degree angle. I'm not sure what that's about. If I can hand you something, this is the view from my backyard. Why don't you pass these around? Those are the 2 buildings that I can see from my backyard. So none of these structures bother me, but I mention them for this purpose. I only see really 3 differences in what they have done and what I seek to do. Number one, I paid my $350 and asked for permission, and I'm not sure they did. If they did, they must have received a variance. I hope they did. Number 2, I do plan to honor the 10-foot setback minimum. And then number 3, I'm going to build a structure, or I hope to build a structure that will look good. It's going to exactly match my house, same vinyl siding, same roof, same pitch, same everything. So I think from a common sense perspective and for the comfort and protection of my neighbors and their property, just from that perspective, there's no reason not to allow me to move forward with the project. Now, I did want to say something about guideline number 5 on the city's recommendation. So guideline 5 requires the following: the plight of the owner of the property for which the variance is sought is due to unique circumstances existing on the property, including but not limited to, and then there's a whole list of things. The list is not that important because it says included but not limited to. But if you just look at the first part of that, it's just not very precise language. When it says that the circumstance has to be unique, well, just Webster's definition, there's never been a unique circumstance, I'm sure, that has come before the board. So I take it to mean that it's simply at your discretion. I assume that that's why our city chooses 5 respected men and women to look at each case and just judge it on its merits with respect to what the purpose is laid out in the document, which I remind you says to promote the health, safety, welfare of Nacogdoches through orderly and efficient development. So as much as the language would permit you to say that anything is unique, according to what you read here, I believe you have the discretion, I hope you have the discretion to deem that a 3,000 square foot house with less than 100 square feet of storage space is a unique situation. So I respectfully ask you to approve my request for a variance. Now, I did have, and I don't want to press my case, but City Planner Helton mentioned this, and so I just wanted to tell you that I'm certainly willing to answer questions. I asked Mr. Paulette and Ms. Helton if they would suggest ways that I could do this that would not require a variance, and they did suggest a couple of ways, but neither one of those ways, and I certainly can answer questions about it, at least in my view, would allow me to do something that wouldn't just bring frustration to my neighbors. You know, it wouldn't look as good, it would hurt property values, and it would be insufficient for my needs. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions?
I have a question. Who is constructing the addition to your carport?
Tim Armstrong Construction.
Okay, ARA Construction. And I assume he'll be pulling a permit once?
Yes.
Okay. And are you going, I assume based on your application that there will be electricity going to the addition to assist with your woodworking projects, but no plumbing or additional gas or anything like that? It'll just be an extension of your current electrical system?
There's electric there now.
Okay.
And, yeah, no gas, no plumbing, no occupancy permit requested.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Anybody else?
What's in the back of your building? What you mean, what's in the back of your home? You know, is there a driveway reaching the house, or is everything from the front? Okay,
Yeah, there's no driveway in the back.
okay,
The driveway goes into the carport there on the side,
okay.
and I can pull up those pictures if you don't have
I can
that.
pull up the aerial image if you would like.
Yes,
Mary
I
Ann?
would, please. Okay. All right,
So the driveway that you see terminates at the carport, and there's no additional vehicular access to the rear of the property.
okay, thank you.
My wife will die when she sees that you're looking at a picture of the messy side of the house. That may be our biggest issue here. Joking.
Any other questions?
And your backyard fence encapsulates the pool area only, so this area is not inside of your wooden privacy fence, correct?
It is inside of it. This is a survey when I purchased the property.
Oh, okay.
I have since, encompassed the whole property with a fence,
Okay, so this addition is also going to be fenced?
inside the fence, yes.
Okay, thank you.
The fence is already there.
Any more questions?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'll now open this up for a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak in favor or against this, now is your time to do that. Okay, hearing no public comment, we will close the public part of the hearing. Any other questions or comments from the board?
If I may, Chairman, I just do want to clarify, so Staff agrees with the fire marshal that the addition won't, increase any kind of hazard as far as public safety, because it doesn't reduce the encroachment between the buildings any further. And so staff isn't concerned about public safety or any of that. We actually don't have any, direct opposition to the request. It's essentially, we just find that the circumstances of the property are similar to the whole neighborhood. So that's why it's a unique circumstance, but it applies to the general area. So that's why we made that determination and the recommendation.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I make a motion that the request be granted.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion is granted. All right, moving on to the second item, consider a request for a variance for the zoning ordinance, section 118-2023A, for the expansion of a non-conforming single-family residence for Lot 5F, City Block 61, located at 3203 Old Tyler Road. This request has been submitted by George Hanson, case file number ZBA 2022-03.
All right, thank you. Again, Alana Helton. This property is 1.5 acres, and you see the image on the aerial. This property, similar to the item that you just heard, was developed prior to 1970, before the city adopted zoning ordinance. And the particular request, again, is a variance to literal enforcement of the ordinance. This is an image of the property on Old Tyler Road. So in the upper left-hand corner is, the overall property as you're standing in the driveway. The image on the lower right-hand corner, that's the north side of the home where they're actually going to be doing the addition. These are just some images of the surrounding properties. So these are properties that are right across the street to the east on Old Tyler Road. There's pasture land, and then there's a single-family residence. That's what's captured in the upper left-hand corner. It's kind of hard to see because there's a lot of vegetation, but it is a single-family home. These are some of the existing development that's along the west side of Old Tyler Road. And so just north of the property is a manufactured home park, and then just south of the property is a manufactured home, but it's the only home on that lot. So it is essentially kind of a single-family character, but the structure itself is a manufactured home. And so the expansion is the expansion of a non-conforming use, not necessarily a non-conforming building. And so the zoning ordinance says that non-conforming uses of land shall not be expanded or extended to other parts of the property. The property is zoned B2 general business, which does not permit single-family by right. And so because single-family isn't a permitted land use, any expansion of that use on the property requires a variance from the zoning board of adjustment. Also surrounding properties, you have commercial zoning to the south, you have R3 two-family zoning to the north and west, and then you have agricultural zoning just across the street on Old Tyler Road. This zoning pattern hasn't changed since 1970. So in 1970, when we adopted zoning, the map looked just like this and hasn't really changed much since then. So the specific additions that are proposed include a 400 square foot addition to the north side of the home. This is going to expand the living area of the primary residence. They're also proposing a 240 square foot covered porch, 600 square foot carport. Right now they don't have any covered parking on the property. And then a 400 square foot storage building for storage of lawn equipment and just general kind of private property maintenance equipment. And so staff finds that this request does meet the conditions of the property because this single-family structure was existing at the time of zoning, but there were also other single-family developed properties in the area that were zoned R3 or Ag, which does permit a single-family zoning. And so staff finds that, again, the character of the area hasn't really changed and the uses haven't changed. And so this is not similarly situated to adjacent properties because it's single-family, which is similar to the other properties, but it's zoned commercial, whereas the next-door neighbor is zoned R3, which really just doesn't make a lot of sense. And so in that regard, staff finds that this is a unique circumstance that isn't applied generally to the area or the surrounding properties. The applicant is also in attendance if the board has any questions. We did send out 5 notices, but we didn't receive any responses from the neighbors. I believe the applicant did talk to one of the larger adjacent property owners who didn't have any questions, but we didn't speak to them directly, so I'll let the applicant speak to that if you would like. And with that, I'll conclude staff's presentation and ask for questions from the board.
think I remember reading in here something that this was in compliance with the comprehensive plan, is that right?
Yes.
For residential, okay.
Yes, so the comprehensive plan is single-family, so this is consistent with that single-family use.
Is this doubling the size of the house?
No, ma'am, so the existing residence, let me pull up that information. And I thought I included that information in the request, but I believe the existing residence is about 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. I can let the applicant state specifically, and I do apologize,
That's all right.
I don't have that information at hand. 2,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
So it's about a 25% increase.
Just looking at the scale on here, it looks like it would, where these are plotted, it looks like you'd probably still meet R1 setbacks or better on here, that'd be right.
Yes, even if it was zoned R1, our proposal would be well in compliance with the more restrictive building setbacks, yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Sir, would you like to speak to the, it's up to you.
No, I'm good.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll open this meeting up to public comment, and we have for or against this, if anyone would like to speak for or against the proposal. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion. Questions or motion?
I make a motion in favor.
Okay.
I second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Both are approved. Any other items that need to come before this board?
No, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, and we're adjourned at 4:50 PM.